going all the way back from Ashland, and we've heard the story, Mom share, that when Dad had this nice, comfortable church, and taking, kind of like Abraham, I'm sure, kind of a situation, taking the family to an unknown country and a strange tongue, down here, from a nice, comfortable setting. Mom was reluctant about that. Away from all of the relatives and friends, not knowing anyone down here whatsoever, on a new venture. I'm sure she had some feelings of doubt, and the mother instincts. And 3 new little kids. I think I was at that time 3 years of age. Yeah, I'm sure there were going to be some doubts, maybe a little bit of insecurity. But she did, and over the years, whenever Dad would do that, of course there was some struggle, but I think once she made that commitment to move with him and she saw the blessings of the Lord, that has made her such an iron will today. When she senses the Holy Spirit say something now, she is able to move forward and not be fearful.
So after a year, Gordon and Freda resigned the pastorate in Ashland and packed the family and all their belongings in a 15-foot trailer. Life in the trailer had its difficulties.
The trailer was small, and she had to let us kids out. Well, Dennis, he was always, Dennis the Menace. He was running around everywhere, and he would just head out for the beyond, and you wouldn't know where he is. So Mother finally bought a long strap and tied him to a tree. And he was tied to this tree for some time, and he lived happily ever after. People would come along and say, "What are you doing to this child?" But he was perfectly happy, and he lived to tell the tale, because it was not an easy thing traveling constantly in a new place each time.
The Lord had given Carol a supernatural gift of playing the piano, and Freda was determined not to neglect her children's potential, even though they had to live out of a trailer.
And they had come down in a little trailer, I remember, when they got there, and it was not a large travel trailer, but what interested me was there was a piano in it. And I would think that would be the last thing you'd make room for in a small travel trailer.
Gordon and Freda believed in divine protection, and traveling like nomads had its dangers.
I remember one time they were driving down the road, and she was in the back seat, or one of them was in the back seat and the other one was driving, and they kept driving as one climbed over the chair, over the seat, and changed the wheels while the car was still going down the road, probably at 60 miles an hour.
Upon Jack Moore's invitation, the Lindsays and the Voice of Healing moved to Shreveport, Louisiana. While in Shreveport, the Voice of Healing grew and hired more staff. Freda was able to concentrate mainly on being a homemaker, although, as Gilbert explains it, she was never completely retired from the ministry.
My mom was more of a housewife in Shreveport, to my memories. I know she probably did things on my dad's books and worked on possibly proofing and magazines, but to my knowledge, she mainly stayed at home.
Voice of Healing was located in Shreveport for 4 years, after which they relocated to Dallas because of its international airport and capabilities to handle the postal needs of the ministry. For Freda, it began to feel like every time they would settle down, the Lord would move them to another city. Freda and Gordon were very different in their temperament, yet she was always faithful to follow where God was leading Gordon. Shira explains.
Now, Mother really had great respect for Dad's ability to hear from God. Because he was such a man of prayer, she knew if he said, God said, that it really was the way it was. So when he said that, then she was ready to go all the way.
So they were a wonderful balance to each other. I mean, she was the one that was motivated. If they were going to go with a project, he'd say, okay, Freda, this is what we want to do, and she would run with it.
Sensing a shift in the focus of the ministry from domestic healing and deliverance to international ministry, Gordon and Freda sought the Lord for an appropriate name change.
I came up to Dad and I said, Dad, what do you think about the name, The Nations for Christ? And it's like he didn't hear me, and he says, oh, Christ for the Nations, I like that. And in a few weeks he decided, okay, I've crossed the Rubicon It's going to be Christ for the Nations.
So with the new name in focus, they began to reach out worldwide. Freda and Gordon saw the ministry expand at home and abroad, and they began to travel more as a team. Gordon being the biblical scholar and Freda being the one gifted in administration, this match was an example of a godly marriage and a productive ministry team. Yet Freda's niece recalls a greater example that Aunt Freda left with her.
She'd always bring these books that she was editing or proofreading or whatever. But I'd hear her early in the morning talking to the Lord, starting out her day, and throughout the day, prayer going up from that room. It was like a holy sanctuary in our home.
Gordon was a prolific writer. He was constantly studying and writing books. Freda would help edit the copy and follow through on printing and distributing them. In addition to helping Gordon produce his books, Freda has encouraged others to write down their messages and put them into book form.
She encouraged me to, I didn't have anything in print. And so in talking to us personally, she encouraged me to, especially the day teaching, put it in book form. Now that's 1953. And it's up about 1964. And finally she said, as busy as she was, a busy woman, you know that, she said, well, I'll edit them for you. And she edited the first 3 books that we printed.
Therefore, after the name change from the Voice of Healing to Christ for the Nations, the Lindsays were involved in healing crusades overseas, literature distribution, and native church construction. In the late 60s, Christ for the Nations was holding seminars in the newly acquired Christian Center. The charismatic movement was fresh and new. The seminars in the Christian Center were powerful times of teaching and visitations from God. Yet Gordon began to sense a call from the Lord to train up others. The formation of a Bible school was what he felt God was leading him to do. Not everyone agreed.
Dad started talking about that he wanted to start a Bible school. And I said to him, Dad, you're too old to start a Bible school. And Mother, I think, basically said the same thing. Dad, you're just too old to start a Bible school. Because then he was 64, something like that. But he just kept on. So finally he was determined to start the school. Mother said, well, your dad's going to start a Bible school, so here we go. And I think the first year there were 50 students, of which he was overjoyed.
Even though Freda's initial reaction was hesitant, once Gordon assured her that God had spoken to him, she was supportive and on board. Christ for the Nations Institute was birthed in 1970. Each year the school gained momentum and increased in students. The environment was charged with excitement.
And we were in that old, what do you call it, barrack, Quonset hut or whatever it is, and we could hear the rain coming down, but the Holy Spirit moved in there in class, and it was just spontaneous. Even though there were speakers and there was praise and worship, and even then I remember Freda Lindsay saying, Judy, we have to have good music. Young people want good music, and if we're going to make disciples and leaders, we want good music. So we started right off with that wonderful praise and worship. We would take all morning sometimes to just worship and pray.
Throughout their married life and ministry together, Freda deferred to Gordon and his spiritual leadership. She was a helpmate, gladly assisting Gordon in whatever area he needed her. The early years of CF&I were not any different. One such Sunday afternoon, in the newly dedicated auditorium, the unthinkable occurred.
Brother Lindsay was going to preach and minister to us, and he was sitting in a chair up there, and Freda Lindsay was at the podium, and she was making an announcement.
And I looked at him, Gordon Lindsay. I heard him breathe a deep sigh, and I looked at him, and his head just slumped down on his chest, and he was gone.
And we rushed up there to see what was going on, and he'd had a heart attack. And he died there. They tried to revive him, but he could be revived.
One half of this perfect match was taken home to be with the Lord. Freda, realizing the weight of the burden foisted upon her, could have been overcome with emotion, but Shira and others were there to gird her up.